Hi. So yes, I'm Benjamin Tabanou. I come from Sciences Po Media Lab. I'm the head of IT at Sciences Po Media Lab. And I will present Hyphe, which is a tool that was built a while ago at Media Lab to build web corpora, initially from the live web, and as we will get to now also from the archived web. So Media Lab is a young unit research. It was created in 2009 by Bruno Latour, the famous anthropologist slash philosophist. And it was built initially as a support center for other research, but it transformed in 2014 into a full research lab. And it has the originality to work with three main pillars, both social sciences, engineering, and design. And we try to intercombine those different disciplines and methods to build research that does usually work on the digital and with digital methods. And this rely on also working with a lot of tools. So the technical team, engineering team of the lab is building open source tools that can be used to leverage data from the web and work on produce results, analyze and visualize things that are used both at Media Lab, but also outside. And a lot of people are actually using our tools elsewhere, whether in France or outside in the world. Bruno said at once that Google is nice, but we need something better, which was maybe a bit pretentious. But so Hyphe was, in a way, our try to answer this problematic. And basically, the idea is to use the web as a research field. So quantitative researchers normally investigate on a field and speak with interviewees. On the web, there's a lot of person participating to social discussion. And so it's a great place to actually harvest data and by exploring those digital traces, answer some research questions. So to do that, Hyphe is a crawler. So why would we crawl the web for social sciences? The idea is that as Tim Berners-Lee conceived it initially, the HTML is relying on those hyperlinks. And there's the real core of the web's architecture. And whenever there's a link from one page to another, it's always a choice. People put links as an actual intention to point to other resources. And so those links actually have some meaning. And so the idea of Hyphe is to exploit those links as a source to actually analyze this architecture between different actors that are present on the web. So the Hyphe was built like that. It has an online demo that you can access at the URL that is shown here. Basically, what Hyphe will do is build a corpus of documents, and those documents are actors, and especially their representation on the web. Potentially the text content of the web pages that are collected, and those links between those actors that will produce this map of all links, not all links between all pages, but those aggregated links between these actors, and be able to actually add new actors, divide actors into multiple ones, and so on. This was used by many researchers across the world and was the source of about, I think, about 50 papers now on very different subjects. As you can see, it can be, there was subjects on privacy, extreme right, NGOs, dairies, so pretty much anything. But so let's go back to the main methodological principle of Hyphe. So the first thing is that for social scientists, it's really hard to define what a website is. Would you consider that Sciences Po Media Lab is at medialab.sciencespo.fr, so it's a subdomain, but sciencespo.fr is a domain. would you consider that the website is Sciences Po or is it Media Lab? So is every subdomains a website, or is only the main domains websites? That's something that's very subjective. And so in every research work, you might want to actually take different decisions and consider some other parts as an actual actor. So what Hyphe introduces is this concept of web entity, which are aggregates of web pages that are defined by a bunch of prefixes of URL. So basically the beginning of a URL will define what the website is, and all URLs that are starting with this prefix will be considered as part of the web entity, and so as part of the actor. So you can define also multiple prefixes. So for instance, if you have you want to include as the presence of Media Lab on the web both its Vimeo, its SlideShare, its formerly X account, for instance, you can, and you will define a bunch of prefixes that correspond to the limits of this specific actor. To do that, the interface will allow the user to actually do that quite easily by just moving a slider from the left to the right and define where exactly you want to define the limit of the specific page. The second methodological principle is the crawling strategy. Most classical crawlers use this method called snowballing, which I guess most also archive do, which basically rely on letting the robot get to a page and find all links and click on all of them, and until a specific depth that was proposed by the user. The problem when doing that is that, especially for research, social science research point of view, is that from the original page, you will quite easily drift to other subjects. So for instance, if you start on the page of Media Lab, and sorry, it looks like someone has this mic off on. So then you will switch quickly to other websites. So for instance, from one page, you get to what we call the top layer of the web, which are those Google, YouTube, Wikipedia. And so quite easily, you will get links that are totally out of subjects. So that's not a good version for social science. So what we try to do with Hyphe is that the user is actually defining which website he actually wants to keep, which is probably actually close to what some web archive projects are doing as you select the domain that you want to keep or not. So basically, Hyphe will rely on a human prospection loop. So initially, you will decide, I want to look for these actors that I define. Then it will crawl the pages of those actors. Then it will return a list of the websites outside of those limits that were linked, and then let the human decide, this one I want to include or this one I don't want to include. And then progressively build a corpus like that as a, as a bunch of entities that are linked together. The problem is that it's really hard to know when to stop, because every time you start a crawl, you get plenty of new websites that are discovered. And so it can, I guess, as archivists, you can know that it's pretty much infinite, although it's not, but it's so big that it's really hard to get to an ending. And so you have, as a researcher, to know when to stop. So the methodological choice is to let the user define a citation threshold. So basically, you will continue this iterative process until you will get to a point where all actors that have been cited by at least those n actors from the already crawled ones are citing those included. I'm not sure I'm really clear. Please ask a question at the end if that's not. Also, another feature of Hyphe is to allow the user to actually enrich the corpus with categories and tags, and as well as free notes. And the interface allows to do that in quite easy ways, similarly to, for instance, Refine, if you know that too. There's also an extra tool that was built that is called Hyphe or Hyphe browser. This tool is actually a full browser that is based on Chrome's code base. Except that whenever you have a tab in your browser, like you can see on this picture on the right part, you can have multiple tabs, create new ones and such. But whenever you're on a tab, you see the URL is overlined to know which is the actor, and on the side you got a box with information on the actual web entity. So here you see it's the entity netpreserve.org that we considered as in, so it's a status where we say we want to keep it inside the corpus, and you got extra information so that you can actually browse the web and choose, do the prospection by actually visiting the web pages and say, yes, I want to include this website, and actually I can tag it while I'm seeing it. And so, yes, this one is actually talking about, I guess, archiving the web. So there are many ways to use Hyphe. Here's an example of a corpus that was made to actually map all actors of free software communities in France. So here I put a threshold of 3, and it took me quite a while to get to that map where we have 6 main communities, which are the open source enterprises, the Linux community, the open data and open commons groups, the tools, the free software tools, the free software NGOs, and the bloggers mostly. And sorry, and I forget the one important part in purple on the bottom, which is freedom of internet and independent access providers. Another example was this map of actors that speak of global climate change. And then all actors were tagged manually by librarians to actually say whether those actors were considering that climatic change was due to human beings or not. And so in green, you see those that consider that climate change is anthropic, when on red, it's not. And here a second category was made. So you can see for the two categories, the cover, whether things are covering each other or not. Another important aspect of Hyphe is that links from one page to another are always directed. And so this directionality, while it's not visible on an actual network map usually, can actually be used for the analysis. And so here is an example where we worked on French medias and realized that the main important central medias were linked all together and linked by all other medias, while all the small and more controversial medias were citing them, but not being cited in return. So finally, we tried to connect Hyphe to web archives. Why to do that? Because for 2 main reasons. First, we sometimes want to actually study how the web, the network and these communities evolve through time. So when you use Hyphe, you can only do that at the present moment. Thanks to web archives, you can actually try and redo that at other moments in the past. A second interesting point is to handle web obsolescence. Quite often there are links that are actually dead, pointing to either disappeared pages or disappeared web domains, actually. Sometimes contents that were just transformed into totally other websites or redirected elsewhere. So thanks to web archives, we can actually complete a corpus, a live corpus, but that would link to pages that would have disappeared. So to do that, we plugged Hyphe onto the different Wayback Machines. And so whenever we want to crawl the past, Hyphe is rewriting URLs to actually use the web archives Wayback Machine directly. and crawl the Wayback Machines themselves while rewriting after for its analysis the URLs and making Hyphe believe those were actually pages from the web. So we initially did it basing it on Internet Archive because it was the most easy from an external point of view as it's accessible to anyone. And then we plugged it to BNF and INA. Thanks to Sarah and Jerome, who I think I also saw in the audience. And then it was quite easy also to try and plug it to archivo.pt, which is accessible also online to anyone. We try to exploit that and work with those this first connection at BNF during a data sprint at BNF's data lab. For the project Respadon. So here's an example of a tree corpus, very small corpus and incomplete ones, but that were made during those few days. On the political campaign of the French presidential election for Jean-Luc Mélenchon in 3 different campaigns, 2012, 2017, and 2022. And for each campaign, we try to categorize the websites and realize that when in 2012 the campaign was relying a lot on classical websites and blogs, blogs progressively completely disappeared and let the place to social networks. Which remain there in 2017 and also in 2022, although they do not look as connected in 2022, but only because of technical limits. Hyphe does not handle pages that are fully relying on JavaScript. And between 2017 and 2022, Twitter completely changed its web interface and was not easily crawlable anymore. And so this is why those connections disappeared in 2022. But as you can see, the social networks are still very present. Hyphe is based also on, I mean, there are a bunch of papers, peer-reviewed papers that were describing Hyphe methodology. And so whenever a researcher is using Hyphe in his paper, he can actually quote those papers to actually support his work. Thanks for your attention. Hyphe is a free and open source software, so you can play with it with the demo. It's a restricted demo, so whenever you're using it, it will only do crawls with a depth of 1 and data that will on corpuses that have not been touched for at least a week will disappear automatically. So don't rely on it for permanent work, I mean for important work, but please feel free to play with it. And if you want to install it, you can either do it easily using Docker locally, or you can install it for multiple users on the cloud or on a server. And please ask on GitHub the issues or by email or Mastodon or Blue Sky if you have any more questions. Thanks.